medicine and being a doctor was much of what defined him, and being at St. Joe's was what it meant to be a doctor.
He was a major leader by example.
Buck probably practiced medicine longer than most people live.
His actual name is Ernest Napier Burson, but I've never heard anybody call him that other than Buck. That's all I've ever heard.
Dr. Buck Burson joined St. Joseph's Hospital when it was still in downtown Atlanta. He established the first gastrointestinal diagnostic unit at St. Joseph's.
He had been one of the first trainees of a very famous gastroenterologist up in Boston, Franz Ingelfinger, who became later the editor of the New England Journal. And so he was one of his first fellows and brought gastroenterology to St. Joseph's Hospital. So he pioneered a whole lot of things people take for granted now.
Serving more than a decade as chief of staff, Burson was respected by colleagues, revered by other physicians, and loved by patients.
People like Buck were very critical to how medicine evolved and how it has prospered and moved forward. And although he was a pretty traditional doc, he was also one who appreciated change, innovation, new frontiers. I think that was also a very important part of who he was.
Buck was a really soft-spoken gentleman, Southern gentleman, and everybody respected him for that. But he was, basically, he commanded and insisted on excellence of himself and of other people. And I think that was his trademark. Everybody knew that about him, and that was what everybody admired so much.
I think Buck's real skill was keeping things very simple. It was a very simple formula that worked for him, and I think it allowed many of us to kind of see the value in how he practiced.
He wasn't a man of many words, okay, but what he said you'd better listen to because they were all important.
He would usually let people like me say what we thought for 15 or 20 minutes, and then he would cut through it in about 30 seconds to explain really how it was.
He certainly elevated this medical staff to the level that it's at now. He was one of the key people to accomplish that, I think, to keep all of us wanting to get better and better and to bring on younger and smarter people than the doctors who are already here. And I think that can be attributed only to Buck Burson.
I never thought that I would get into the position of the chief of the medical staff, but I reflect every day on the things I learned from Buck Burson. He was truly an idol for me.
His respect for the Sisters of Mercy, devotion to the hospital's mission, and love for his patients led him to eventually focus solely on internal medicine, where he was the embodiment of the quintessential country family physician.
He would sometimes just accept food or whatever that he could from the patients. And he just didn't feel like just putting the money down on the books was important when the patients didn't have that.
I think the kind of compassionate care that he exhibited, to me, he was mercy care before there was mercy care.
He came from humble beginnings, born and reared in the small town of Camilla, Georgia. As a young Navy doctor, the first patients Dr. Burson tended were Marines.
He was there in the very thickest of the fighting that the Marines had in World War II in the Pacific.
There, Burson braved intense enemy fire, crossing an exposed airfield to treat wounded men.
I remember sitting out here with tears in my eyes as I listened to him tell the stories of being a Navy doctor taking care of Marines on Iwo Jima. It was rather amazing.
The U.S. Marines recognized Burson for his grace under pressure by awarding him the Bronze Star.
Usually doctors are taking care of people who win Bronze Stars. We don't put ourselves in harm's way, but he did. He put himself in harm's way to save some people and was quite a hero himself as well as an amazing physician.
Opportunities to share a witty line were never lost on Buck. He used his dry sense of humor to heal patients and put colleagues at ease.
He came to my house, which I was living in a duplex then, and brought me a baby gift and asked me when I'd be back. And I said, well, I can't even sit down yet. I've just delivered a baby. It had only been a few weeks. He goes, well, you don't think you're going to sit down when you come to work?
At one time, he came into my office wearing a gadget that looked like a package of cigarettes and a wire going to his ear, and I said, well, Buck, does that help you hear any better? And he looked at me deadpanned, nope, but when people see it, they speak more loudly.
And he was never in better humor than when he was gone fishing.
Most of us who got into fishing had to read the latest fishing magazines, find out what the hot lure was. We had to have the best vest. We had to have everything exactly right. And Buck would show up in a 40-year-old vest with his fishing rods, which he'd had forever also. And he'd hook a live night crawler onto his hook and go out and catch bigger fish than any of the rest of us did.
We're out in this little John boat that's about, couldn't have been more than 15 or 12 feet long. And we're all fishing, and Sid, who was about 5, and myself and Buck. And my son stands up, being a 5-year-old, pulls his pants down and just pees. Just phew, like a missile. And Buck, and I'm looking at him just like, oh. And Buck just hits me and he goes, what power.
Dr. Buck Burson, a humble physician dedicated to medicine, his patients, and St. Joseph's. It is in his tradition of excellence and his name the Burson Award is given, recognizing physicians who give their all.
The Burson Award is one that is unique because it does recognize a blend of areas of leadership and responsibility and commitment to this institution.
I thought of the tenets of the award and the things that he represented and that I think all of us should try to strive for, of excellence in our profession, of leadership and service to our community, and what we can do in the mercy sense of service to all of our patients, even when, as Buck experienced, they pay you in blankets or food.
I mean, how many heroes do you meet? You know, a few. I mean, a handful of heroes you have in your life. And if you think of your own life, you get a few. How many people would consider Buck their hero? A lot. I mean, a lot of people look to him.